Dark clouds rolled across the Montana sky, swallowing the last remnants of daylight as Jackson Miller urged his horse faster along the trail. The mountain ranch where he worked as a cattle hand was still 15 minutes away, and the first heavy raindrops had already begun to fall. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a warning of the deluge to come. "Come on, Rusty," Jackson murmured, patting the chestnut quarter horse's neck. At 32, Jackson had weathered countless Montana storms, but something about this one felt different, more urgent. The wind picked up, bending the tall pines that lined the dirt road, connecting the town of Pinewood to the Double R Ranch. The rain intensified, coming down in sheets now. Lightning flashed, illuminating the countryside in brief, electric bursts. Jackson pulled his hat lower and hunched his shoulders against the downpour when he spotted something through the curtain of rain. A car pulled over on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking weakly. He slowed Rusty to a stop beside the vehicle, a small blue sedan with out-of-state plates. Inside, a young woman gripped the steering wheel, her face a mask of frustration and worry. Jackson tapped on the window, and she jumped before rolling it down just enough to hear him. "You all right, ma'am?" he called over the howling wind. "I'm stuck," she replied, her voice tinged with embarrassment. "Wheels caught in the mud, and my phone has no service out here." Jackson assessed the situation quickly. The car's front tire had sunk deep into the soft shoulder, and with the rain coming down this hard, she wouldn't be getting out without help. "Ranch I work at is just up the road. I can take you there until the storm passes. Then we'll get someone to pull your car out," he offered. The woman hesitated, looking him over, his soaked denim jacket, muddy boots, and the honest concern in his eyes. Lightning cracked overhead, followed immediately by a deafening boom of thunder. The decision made itself. "I'm Emma Chun," she said, grabbing her purse and a small overnight bag. "I was headed to Pinewood to visit my aunt." "Jackson Miller," he replied, extending a hand to help her from the car. "You're going the right way, at least." Getting Emma onto Rusty proved challenging in the downpour. Jackson dismounted, created a makeshift step with his interlaced fingers, and helped boost her up before swinging back into the saddle behind her. The closeness was awkward but necessary. "Hold on tight," he instructed, and Emma gripped the saddle horn as they set off toward the ranch. The journey was tense and wordless, both riders focused on enduring the storm. Emma's city clothes, jeans, sneakers, and a light jacket were woefully inadequate for the Montana spring storm. Jackson felt her shivering and urged Rusty to a faster pace. As they approached the ranch, the sprawling main house came into view, warm light spilling from its windows. Mrs. Rodriguez, the ranch owner's wife and cook, met them at the door with towels and concerned exclamations. "Jackson Miller, what on earth? And who's this poor soul?" "Found her stranded on County Road 8, Jackson explained, helping Emma down from Rusty. "Her car stuck in the mud." Mrs. Rodriguez ushered Emma inside while Jackson took Rusty to the stables. By the time he made it back to the house, Emma was seated by the fireplace in the main room, wrapped in a blanket, her black hair still damp but her color improved. "Better?" he asked, accepting the mug of coffee Mrs. Rodriguez pressed into his hands. Emma nodded. "Much. Thank you for stopping. Not everyone would have." Something in her direct gaze caught him off guard. Emma was probably in her late 20s, with intelligent eyes and a determined set to her jaw. Her hands, wrapped around a steaming mug, bore calluses that spoke of work rather than leisure. "You're a long way from home," Jackson observed, noticing her slight accent. "San Francisco," she confirmed. "I'm a landscape architect. My aunt's been trying to get me to visit for years. She says Pinewood needs someone with my skills." Jackson raised an eyebrow. "Small town like Pinewood? Not much call for landscape architects here." Emma smiled for the first time since they'd met. "That's what I told her. But Aunt Lynn is persistent, and now I'm starting to think this trip might be more interesting than I expected." Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside, something quiet and unexpected had begun to take root. The next morning dawned clear and bright, as if the previous night's storm had been a fevered dream. Jackson rose early, as was his habit, and found Emma already in the ranch kitchen talking animatedly with Mrs. Rodriguez. She wore borrowed clothes, jeans that were slightly too big, and a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, but somehow looked more at ease than she had the night before. "Morning," Jackson said, reaching for the coffee pot. "Sleep all right?" "Better than I expected," Emma replied. "Mrs. Rodriguez has been telling me about the town's upcoming centennial celebration." The older woman nodded enthusiastically. "Pinewood turns 100 this summer. Big plans, but everything's behind schedule. The town council can't agree on anything." Jackson poured his coffee, listening with half an ear. Ranch work didn't leave much time for town politics, though he knew the centennial was a big deal for the locals. He'd lived in Pinewood for nearly 8 years now, ever since leaving his family's struggling ranch in Wyoming, but still sometimes felt like an outsider. "I called Bill's auto about your car," he told Emma. "He can't get out there until this afternoon. The storm washed out part of Timber Creek Road, and he's helping people stranded on that side." Emma's face fell slightly. "I promised my aunt I'd be there yesterday." "I can take you into town after breakfast," Jackson offered, surprising himself. "Got some errands to run anyway." Mrs. Rodriguez shot him a knowing look that he pretended not to see. An hour later, they were in Jackson's battered pickup truck, bumping down the still muddy road toward Pinewood. The landscape around them was transformed by the storm, greener, fresher, with wildflowers beginning to peek through the grass. "It's beautiful here," Emma said, breaking a comfortable silence. "Different from what I expected." "What did you expect?" She laughed. "I don't know. More cows? Less majesty, I guess. The mountains are incredible." Jackson felt a surge of pride, though the mountains weren't his to claim. "Wait till you see them in the evening light. That's when they really show off." In town, Pinewood's main street was busy with post-storm activity. Shopkeepers swept debris from sidewalks, and the local diner was packed with people swapping storm stories over coffee. "My aunt's place is just past the hardware store," Emma directed. "The blue Victorian with the wraparound porch." Jackson pulled up in front of the house, one of the oldest and best maintained in town. Before he could get out to open Emma's door, a habit his mother had drilled into him, the front door of the house flew open, and a small, energetic woman hurried down the steps. "Emma, finally! I was so worried when you didn't arrive last night," the woman exclaimed, embracing her niece tightly before turning curious eyes to Jackson. "And who's this?" "Aunt Lynn, this is Jackson Miller. He rescued me during the storm when my car got stuck. Jackson, this is my Aunt Lynn Chin." Jackson extended his hand, but Lynn bypassed it entirely for a hug. "Any man who helps my niece is welcome in my home. You must stay for lunch." Before Jackson could protest, he found himself ushered inside the Victorian home. The interior was a surprising blend of traditional American antiques and subtle Asian influences, delicate watercolor paintings alongside vintage pinewood photographs, a carved jade chest set on a pine table. Lynn disappeared into the kitchen, insisting on making tea, while Emma gave Jackson a slightly apologetic smile. "She's unstoppable once she decides something," Emma explained. "But her dumplings are worth it, I promise." Lynn's home office, visible through an open door, caught Jackson's attention. Specifically, the large blueprint spread across a drafting table. "Your aunt's an architect, too?" he asked. Emma nodded. "Was. She retired 5 years ago, but still consults occasionally. She was one of the first Chinese-American women to run her own architecture firm in California." Lynn returned with tea and a determination to learn everything about Jackson. Under her friendly interrogation, he found himself talking more than he had in months, about growing up on a struggling ranch in Wyoming, his parents' eventual foreclosure, his dreams of saving enough to buy his own small property someday. "A man connected to the land," Lynn observed approvingly. "That's becoming rare these days." When Emma excused herself to freshen up, Lynn leaned forward conspiratorially. "My niece needs to slow down, to appreciate what matters. San Francisco is eating her alive, all work, no connection. This town needs someone with her vision, and she needs a place like this." Jackson shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, I just helped her out of a storm." Lynn's eyes twinkled. Sometimes that's how the best stories begin. 3 days after the storm, Jackson's phone rang, an unusual occurrence in itself. Few people had his number, and fewer still used it. The voice on the other end caught him by surprise. "Jackson, it's Emma Chun. I hope you don't mind, but Lynn gave me your number." He stepped away from the fence he'd been repairing. "Everything all right with your car?" "Yes, all fixed now. Thanks to your help." She paused. "Actually, I'm calling about something else. The town council is meeting tonight about the centennial, and I'd like you to come with me." Jackson frowned. "Me? What's it got to do with ranch hands?" "It has everything to do with the people who live and work there," Emma replied. "Besides, I need an ally. I'm presenting some ideas, and it would help to have a friendly face." That evening, Jackson found himself in Pinewood's small town hall, feeling distinctly out of place among the business owners and local officials. Emma sat beside him, reviewing notes with intense concentration. She'd spent the past few days touring the town, camera in hand, talking to residents and examining the small public spaces that had fallen into disrepair. Mayor Thompson called the meeting to order, his round face creased with worry. "As you all know, our centennial is 8 weeks away, and we're nowhere near ready. The storm damaged the town square gazebo, and the budget for repairs was already stretched thin." Various council members offered suggestions: scaled-back celebrations, emergency fundraisers, postponement. Emma listened carefully, then raised her hand. "Mr. Mayor, if I may, I've prepared some alternative suggestions." With confident steps, Emma approached the front of the room. Jackson watched as she transformed from the stranded motorist he'd rescued into a poised professional. Using her laptop and the room's projector, she presented a vision for the centennial that had the room buzzing. "Pinewood doesn't need expensive contractors," she explained, showing before and after sketches of the town square. "What you need is community involvement. In San Francisco, we've had success with volunteer-driven projects that bring people together while saving costs." Her plan was practical yet inspired: a series of weekend workshops where townspeople could help rebuild the gazebo and revitalize the square under professional guidance. She'd identified local sources for materials, calculated costs, and even designed simple improvements that would honor the town's history while making spaces more functional. The centennial shouldn't just be about celebrating the past, Emma concluded. It should be about investing in Pinewood's future. The silence that followed her presentation lasted only seconds before the room erupted in questions and comments. Some council members were skeptical, others enthusiastic. Through it all, Emma answered with calm confidence. When Mayor Thompson asked who would oversee these community workshops, Emma hesitated for the first time. "Well, I could stay for a few weeks to get things started. And we'd need someone local, someone who understands construction and can communicate well with volunteers." Her eyes found Jackson in the crowd, someone like Jackson Miller. All heads turned toward him. Jackson felt his face grow warm. "Hold on," he began, but Mayor Thompson was already nodding enthusiastically. "Miller's a good man, knows his way around building projects. What do you say, Jackson? 2 Saturdays a month for the next 2 months? The doubler could spare you, I'm sure." Put on the spot, Jackson looked at Emma, who mouthed sorry, with an expression that was anything but apologetic. Something about her determination, her vision for a town that wasn't even hers, resonated with him. "I reckon I could help out," he said finally. The meeting concluded with tentative approval for Emma's plan, pending final budget review. As people filed out, Emma approached Jackson, her expression a mix of triumph and contrition. "I should have warned you," she admitted, "but I wasn't sure you'd agree if I asked beforehand." "You sure have a way of pulling people into your plans," Jackson observed, not entirely displeased. Outside the town hall, the evening was settling into the kind of perfect Montana spring night that made even the most restless soul feel at home. The mountains caught the last golden light, just as Jackson had told Emma they would. "You're staying then?" he asked as they walked toward Lynn's house. "For a few weeks at least?" Emma nodded. "My firm gave me 2 weeks' leave. After that, I'll have to figure something out." She glanced at him. "Will you really help with the project?" Under the deepening blue sky, with the scent of pine and wild grass in the air, Jackson found himself making a commitment to more than just weekend workshops. "I'll be there," he promised. Every step of the way. The first community workshop for Pinewood's Centennial Project dawned clear and cool. By 9 in the morning, the town square buzzed with activity, volunteers signing in, materials being unloaded, and Emma at the center of it all, clipboard in hand, directing traffic with natural authority. Jackson arrived early to help set up, surprised by the turnout. Nearly 40 people had shown up, from teenagers looking to earn community service hours to retirees eager to contribute their skills. "Quite the army you've assembled," he remarked to Emma as she handed him a site plan. "People care about this town," she replied, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "They just needed a way to show it." The day unfolded in a rhythm of work and laughter. Jackson found himself leading a team rebuilding the gazebo's foundation, while Emma moved between groups, offering guidance and encouragement. They worked well together, he realized, her vision and his practical know-how creating something neither could accomplish alone. By late afternoon, the square had transformed. The damaged gazebo foundation was repaired, flower beds were prepared for planting, and fresh paint brightened the worn benches. As volunteers began to disperse, Emma collapsed onto a newly painted bench beside Jackson, careful not to touch the wet surface. "We did it," she said, fatigue and satisfaction mingling in her voice. "Phase 1 complete." Jackson nodded, surveying their work. "You know your stuff, Chin. These people respect that." "So do you," she countered. "They listen when you speak." The evening light painted the mountains in shades of gold and purple, just as Jackson had promised that first day. Emma's face softened as she took in the view. "I've been designing spaces for years," she said quietly, "but I've never felt as connected to a project as I do to this one." Later that night, back in his small cabin on the Double R Ranch, Jackson dreamed of Emma. Not in the way men sometimes dream of women they're attracted to, but in a different, more profound sense. He dreamed of her staying in Pinewood, opening a small design firm in one of the vacant Main Street shops. He saw her transforming the town bit by bit, bringing life back to neglected spaces. In his dream, she was happy here, her city restlessness replaced by purpose. He woke before dawn, the dream lingering like morning mist. It was foolish, he knew. Emma had a life in San Francisco, a successful career, probably friends, and maybe even someone special waiting for her return. Yet throughout the day, as he went about his ranch work, the images from his dream stayed with him. Over the next 2 weeks, a routine developed. During the days, Jackson worked at the ranch. Evenings and weekends were devoted to the Centennial Project. And at night, he dreamed of Emma's future in Pinewood. Different versions, different details, but always with her choosing to stay. They grew closer through their work together. Emma began stopping by the ranch in the evenings to review plans or discuss the next phase of the project. Sometimes they'd sit on the porch of his cabin, drinking coffee and watching the sunset. She told him about her life in San Francisco, the prestigious firm where she worked, the small apartment with a view of nothing but the building across the street, the constant pressure to climb higher, achieve more. "Don't you miss home?" he asked one evening. "Your parents are in California, right?" Emma nodded. "Silicon Valley. My father's in tech, my mother teaches chemistry. They've always been driven, always expected the same from me." She traced the rim of her coffee mug. "But lately I've been wondering if I'm living their dream or mine." "And what is your dream?" Jackson asked, genuinely curious. Emma was quiet for a long moment. "To create spaces that matter," she finally said. "Places that bring people together, that have meaning beyond just looking good in a portfolio." She looked around at the mountains, the pastures, the distant lights of Pinewood. Places like this. One night, after a particularly productive workshop, where they'd completed the gazebo ahead of schedule, Lynn invited several volunteers, including Jackson, for dinner. As they sat around the dining table, Lynn shared stories of Pinewood's history, how her late husband had fallen in love with the town while passing through on a business trip, eventually convincing her to buy the Victorian as a summer home. "He always said we'd retire here," Lynn recalled, a wistful smile on her face. "He didn't get the chance, but I'm fulfilling that dream for both of us." That night, Jackson's dream shifted. He saw Emma not just staying in Pinewood, but staying with him. building something together that was bigger than a gazebo or a town square. He woke with the image still clear in his mind, and the realization that he was falling in love with a woman whose departure date was circled on the calendar. Emma's 2 weeks in Pinewood stretched into 3, then 4. Each time she called her firm in San Francisco, she negotiated for a little more time, pointing to the success of the Centennial Project as professional development. But the deadline was approaching, both for the Centennial celebration and for her return to California. The town had been transformed by their work together. The square now boasted a beautifully restored gazebo, flowering native plants, and new pathways that connected the historic buildings. Shopkeepers had been inspired to refresh their storefronts, and the town council had approved funding for new signage highlighting Pinewood's history. But it was more than just physical changes. The workshops had created new connections among residents, bridging long-standing divides between old-timers and newcomers. Emma had become a familiar figure in town, greeted warmly wherever she went. And Jackson, always respected but somewhat isolated by nature, found himself drawn into the community in ways he hadn't experienced before. 1 week before the Centennial celebration, Jackson arrived at Lynn's house for their final planning meeting to find Emma sitting on the porch steps, phone in hand, her expression troubled. "Everything all right?" he asked, settling beside her. "My boss called. The firm is pitching for a major project, a corporate campus in Seattle. They want me back immediately to help with the proposal." She looked up at him, conflict evident in her eyes. "I'd be leading the design team if we win the bid." "That's a big opportunity," Jackson said carefully, though his chest tightened at the thought of her leaving sooner than planned. "It is. Career-defining, actually." Emma set her phone down. "I should be excited." "But you're not." She shook her head slowly. "I don't know what I am. 6 weeks ago, I would have jumped at this chance without a second thought. Now," her voice trailed off as she gazed toward the mountains. They sat in silence, shoulders almost touching, the evening air cool around them. From inside the house came the sound of Lynn humming as she prepared dinner, unaware of the conversation on her porch. "Remember that first day at the town meeting?" Emma finally asked. "When I talked about the Centennial being about Pinewood's future, not just its past." Jackson nodded. "I've been thinking about futures a lot lately," she continued. "What mine looks like, what I want it to look like." "And what do you want?" Jackson asked, his voice lower than he intended. Emma turned to face him fully. "That's just it. For the first time in my life, I'm not sure. Or maybe." She hesitated. "Maybe I am sure, and I'm just afraid to admit it." Jackson had never been a man of many words, preferring to let his actions speak for him. But in that moment, he knew he needed to speak the truth that had been growing in him since the storm that brought Emma into his life. "I've been dreaming about you," he said simply. When her eyebrows rose, he quickly clarified. "Not like that. I've been dreaming about you staying in Pinewood, opening your own firm here, making a life that makes you happy." He took a breath. "Sometimes, in these dreams, you make that life with me." The admission hung between them, as real and solid as the porch beneath them. Emma's eyes widened, not with shock but with recognition. "I've been having those same thoughts," she confessed. "Not dreams exactly, but possibilities I can't stop considering." Jackson reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "I'm not asking you to give up your career or your dreams, but I am asking if there's room in those dreams for this place, for the people here." He paused. "For me." Before Emma could answer, Lynn called them in for dinner. The moment was suspended, unresolved, as they rose from the porch steps. But Emma didn't let go of his hand as they walked inside. The next morning, Emma called her firm in San Francisco. Jackson wasn't privy to the conversation, but when she met him at the town square later that day, her face was serene, decided. "I told them I won't be back for the Seattle project," she said without preamble. "In fact, I won't be coming back at all. I've resigned." Jackson's heart hammered at his chest. "Emma, I never meant for you to." She held up a hand to stop him. "This isn't just about you, Jackson, though you're definitely part of it." Her smile was radiant, confident. "I'm staying in Pinewood. I'm going to start my own small practice here. Lynn's already offered me the sunroom as an office until I can find a proper space. And us? Jackson asked, hardly daring to believe what was happening. Emma stepped closer, resting her hands lightly on his chest. That's a future I'd like to build, if you're willing. One day at a time, just like we built this, she said, gesturing to the transformed town square around them. Under the Montana sky, with the mountains as witnesses, Jackson Miller stopped dreaming of Emma Chen's future and started living it with her.